Welcome to the deep dive.
Hmm.
So usually when we unpack a stack of documents about, a major leap in computer architecture, we're looking at these really sterile diagrams.
Or like a highly polished corporate press release or something.
Exactly. But today we have something completely different on the table because sitting right in the middle of some of the most dense, mathematically complex blueprints we have ever seen is this jarringly beautiful, deeply personal, sunlit photograph.
Yeah, it creates this absolute cognitive collision when you see it.
It really does. It's just a picture of a man resting his face against the nose of a scruffy Schnauzer.
You have this warm biological frailty placed directly alongside the cold, immortal logic of machine architecture. It sets the tone for everything we're going to explore today.
Let's get right into who this is, because the man in the photo is Lev Goukassian. And the context for everything we're discussing today is a literal ticking clock.
A very literal one, yeah.
Right. The date of his terminal diagnosis was September 1st, 2023. And for nearly 2 years, he fought the standard medical battles. But then on August 2, 2025, he stopped treatment.
And, the phrasing in his personal notes is incredibly specific there, too. He didn't call it giving up.
No, he didn't.
He actually called it a reallocation of resources.
Reallocation of resources. I mean, that is just such an engineer's way to describe accepting the end of your life.
It really is.
He realized he had, maybe 6 months left? And instead of writing a bucket list or going on a world tour, he used his failing biological battery to write this massive open-source code architecture.
Right, an architecture designed to make it mathematically impossible for tech companies to operate in secret.
It's wild. He utilized the absolute certainty of his deadline to shed every ounce of human ego and fear.
Which is exactly our mission today. We're going to unpack his ternary logic architecture. We need to understand how he built an immortal system while his own biological system was failing.
And we want to challenge you, the listener, to reevaluate your own relationship with digital speed.
Because that's really at the heart of this.
It is. So we have to start with the sheer scale of this project. Building a global architecture in just 6 months with failing health. I mean, he physically couldn't sit at a keyboard and manually type millions of lines of code.
No, absolutely not. The sources show he had to outsource the actual labor. He had to become a conductor rather than, a typist.
Right, which leads us to this incredible schematic in the file called the masterpiece matrix.
Oh, that diagram is mind-blowing.
It really paints a picture. It maps out this dark workstation where Lev basically commanded a massive networked array of language models. He had ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, Kimi, Qwen, DeepSeek, and Ernie all running in parallel.
Just a total symphony of machines firing all at once.
Yeah, he set the philosophical boundaries, the tempo, the core axioms,
Yeah.
and then he forced the machines to generate the heavy syntax and the complex logic structures required to build the system.
But, and I know what you're going to say here, there's an obvious issue.
Right, I have to jump in with a massive red flag. We all know large language models hallucinate. They make things up to sound plausible.
Constantly.
So if you are building a foundational governance system designed to outlast humanity, how on earth do you trust code written by AIs known for fabricating reality?
Well, normally you couldn't. That flaw would be catastrophic. I mean, a foundational layer built on hallucinated code would crumble immediately.
Exactly.
But Lev anticipated that,
yeah.
which is why he engineered this brutal automated feedback mechanism. He created a 5-step iterative loop.
Okay, how did that work?
The most critical part of it was a secondary cluster of AIs that he called the stressing agent.
The attack dogs.
That's a great way to think about them.
Yeah.
Their singular objective was destruction. They didn't build anything at all.
So they were just there to break stuff.
Right. They were designed to hunt the code generated by the masterpiece matrix for logical contradictions. Specifically, they intentionally forced what computer scientists call state-space explosions.
Okay, hold on. Break that down for me. What is a state-space explosion?
Basically, imagine overloading an AI's memory map with millions of contradictory variables and extreme edge cases, all at the exact same time.
Oh, wow. So just bombarding it.
Yeah, exactly. The stressing agent would bombard the logic gates to see if the underlying math would collapse under the weight of too many possibilities.
So if the code crashed or produced an illogical outcome, it was just instantly deleted as garbage.
Instantly.
Yeah.
It's like a digital gladiatorial arena. The models write the code, and the stressing agents try to murder it.
That's intense.
Only the code that survived this epistemic validation, this really intense cryptographic cross-referencing, was allowed to survive to the next round.
You know, when you look at the audacity of that entire process, you might think a man trying to govern the future of the internet has a massive ego.
Sure.
I mean, engineering a system to force global conglomerates to bend to your rules forever, that certainly sounds like the ultimate god complex.
Dictating the internet's infrastructure from your deathbed is quite the legacy play.
Right. But Lev completely rejected that framing. In his notes, he referred to himself as the janitor of eternity.
The janitor of eternity.
Yeah. Because the ternary logic system is mathematically verifiable and completely open source, he felt he divorced the creation from the creator.
Like a janitor working in the basement, just fixing the plumbing that the original architects ignored.
Exactly. He explicitly wrote that he didn't want a monument or some proprietary metal vault with his name on it. He just wanted to fix the plumbing before his time was up.
And that brings us to the actual plumbing issue, right? Like, what was so fundamentally broken that a dying man spent his last days trying to fix it?
Well, in his notes, he refers to our current landscape as the binary world.
Right. The binary world's basically the dominant ethos of our entire technological era. It operates entirely on Boolean logic. Everything is a 1 or a 0, true or false, execute or abort.
There's no middle ground.
None. And this operates inside what Lev called the metal vault. These proprietary, secretive, corporate black boxes where algorithms are optimized purely for speed, engagement, and profit.
Ah, the classic Silicon Valley move fast and break things mantra.
Exactly. But the problem with moving that fast in a purely binary system is that you strip away any capacity for hesitation.
Because if you only have two states, execute or abort, you have no mechanism to pause and evaluate truth.
Right, and Lev has this really powerful analogy in the notes for this. He describes our digital landscape as a massive ship caught in a heavy storm.
Okay, I like that visual.
So in a binary system, your ballast, the heavy weight keeping the ship upright is only placed on the extreme left or the extreme right of the hull.
Oh man, so when the weight is only on the extremes, the ship must just oscillate violently.
It does. We swing from immediate visceral outrage to total apathy. A positive execution to a negative abort.
Back and forth, back and forth.
Right, building kinetic energy until the ship inevitably capsizes.
You see it everywhere in how we interact online, you know? An algorithm feeds you something infuriating, and the interface basically demands you either smash the like button or fire off an angry comment in a microsecond.
There's no time to think. And Lev's solution to stop that violent oscillation was ternary logic.
Which means adding a third option.
Yes. He proposed placing a third stone dead center in the hull.
The zero state.
Or the epistemic hold, yeah. And it is crucial to understand that this is not an off switch.
Wait, it's not.
No, it is a mathematically active state of doubt and hesitation. The system is awake, it is drawing power, but it is actively withholding execution until the truth of a variable can be verified.
This brings us right back to that photo of Vinci, the Schnauzer.
Oh, yes. I love this part.
In the notes, Lev literally calls his dog the living embodiment of ternary logic. Like when Vinci hears a strange sound down the hall, he doesn't instantly toggle between deep sleep and violent attack.
He doesn't just bark wildly at a shadow.
Right. The dog lifts his head, he listens, he conserves his kinetic energy, he holds the zero state until the reality of the situation is verified.
He hesitates.
Yeah. And just think about that for yourself for a second. How often do you just instantly bark at a digital shadow? How often do you fire off a reaction or let an algorithm manipulate your outrage simply because the binary world rewarded you for speed?
We have functionally engineered hesitation out of the human experience.
We really have. And Lev realized we had to engineer it back in.
But, I love the dog analogy, but I have a major cynical hang-up here.
What's that?
Well, a philosophy of hesitation is beautiful in a vacuum, right? But in the real world, corporate executives have master passwords.
Ah, right.
If a mandatory pause threatens $1 billion quarterly profit, some engineer is just going to rewrite the software policy to bypass it. So how did Lev prevent human greed from just patching out his zero state?
He abandoned software entirely for the governance layer.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He realized software is too fragile. It's too obedient to authority. So he introduced the concept of delay-insensitive ternary logic, or DITL, and something called the window comparator.
Okay, my brain just stuttered on window comparator. What is that?
Okay, think of it as a literal electronic checkpoint. It measures two incoming voltage signals. If those signals don't match the exact parameters of verified truth, the comparator drops the signal to zero.
So no electricity flows at all.
Exactly. Lev took his ethics and encoded them into physical electrical resistance.
He encoded ethics into hardware. That's insane. How do you actually build that?
He designed physical substrates using Teox RRAM, which are basically memoristive cells that remember their electrical resistant state and require actual physical energy to change.
Okay.
And he combined those with molar C elements.
I'm going to need an analogy for a molar C element because that sounds like a sci-fi hyperdrive.
Right. Okay, think of a molar C element as a physical lock with two keyholes that must be turned at the exact same time.
I see.
It's a logic gate that absolutely refuses to change its output unless all of its inputs agree. So if an AI's speed lane says go, but the truth verification lane is still processing, this physical piece of metal traps the electrical signal.
Wow. So the electricity literally cannot move forward until truth is verified.
You cannot force the energy through the circuit without violating the laws of physics. Philosophy becomes a strict voltage threshold.
The hardware literally refuses to let the electricity flow. That is mind-bending.
And the schematic calls this the 50 meters constitutional gate. It operates on what he named the Goukassian vow.
Which is?
Refuse when harm is clear. Pause when truth is uncertain. Proceed where truth is.
Okay, so how does that 50 millisecond delay actually function in real time?
Through a dual-lane latency architecture, you have the execution lane where the AI makes an inference in under 2 milliseconds. Lightning fast.
Right.
But the physical hardware gate requires a provisional permission token, or PPT, from the truth lane. And generating that cryptographic token isn't just a digital rubber stamp.
It has to do the work.
Exactly. The system has to perform a massive cryptographic math problem, computing what's called a Merkle path, to prove the AI didn't tamper with its own logic. Solving that math takes exactly 50 milliseconds of physical computation time. You literally can't cheat the clock.
Let me stop you there, though. Because if I take this schematic to a venture capital boardroom tomorrow and pitch an architecture based on intentional delay, I'm getting laughed out of the building. I mean, in high-frequency trading, 50 milliseconds is a lifetime. They spend billions of dollars boring through mountains just to shave microseconds off fiber optic cables.
Oh, they would absolutely laugh. Until, you show them the anti-money laundering or AML schematic that Lev included in the sources.
Okay, what does that show?
Well, what is the actual cost of their blinding binary speed? Currently, the global financial system spends $274 billion annually on binary AML compliance.
$274 billion, and what does that actually buy them?
A system with a 90 and 95% false positive rate.
Wow.
And a global illicit interdiction rate of less than 1%.
Wait. They catch less than 1% of laundered money.
Yes, because binary systems execute blindly in microseconds. Laundering relies on the escape velocity of multi-jurisdictional layering.
Like moving money through 5 different shell companies in 3 different countries in half a second?
Exactly. The money moves frictionlessly, and then human stewards are forced to write suspicious activity reports after the damage is already done.
We are just documenting failure rather than preventing it.
Ah, you hit the nail on the head. So Lev's L gates physically break that escape velocity by forcing the system into an epistemic hold, waiting that 50 milliseconds to mathematically verify provenance at every single jump. A frictionless 6-hour laundering chain gets stretched into days or weeks.
Oh, which completely exposes the funds.
Yes. Delay isn't a bug in ternary logic. It is the core enforcement mechanism. It kills ungoverned execution.
Okay, I am struggling with a massive contradiction in Lev's design here, though. The notes say this system requires a cryptographically anchored decision log for every single action. The rule is literally no log equals no action, and these logs are stored on a public ledger.
That is correct.
But how does this transparent glass vault exist in our reality? If this ledger remembers everything forever on a blockchain, isn't that a massive violation of the right to be forgotten?
Like under laws like GDPR Article 17, where a user has the right to demand their personal data be deleted?
Right. You can't just delete a blockchain.
You can't. And that is what Lev called the privacy paradox. But he built this brilliant workaround using ephemeral key rotation, or EKR, combined with structural hash chains.
You're going to have to walk me through that, because a permanent ledger and total privacy feel mutually exclusive.
Okay, think about the separation between the data itself and the proof that an action occurred. The personal data payload, who you are, what you bought, is encrypted with a temporary key.
Okay, tracking so far.
When a user requests deletion under GDPR, the system doesn't try to erase the blockchain block. It just permanently destroys the decryption key.
Oh. Okay, so it's like a self-shredding letter inside A permanent transparent envelope?
Yes, that's a perfect way to visualize it. The personal data inside the letter becomes computationally unrecoverable. It self-shreds.
But the structural tracking number on the outside the transparent envelope, or the hash chain, remains on the ledger forever to prove that the AI made a decision at that specific moment.
Exactly. That satisfies the auditors and the privacy regulators at the same exact time.
But what about quantum computing? We always hear about that harvest now, decrypt later threat.
Right, where hackers steal encrypted data today, waiting for a quantum computer to be built in 10 years that can crack it. Doesn't that compromise the shredded letter?
You'd think so, but Lev future-proofed against that exact scenario. He pre-reserved slots in the architecture for NIST post-quantum standards, specifically a cryptographic lattice structure called ML-Chem-Pen 024.
Wow, he really thought of everything.
He did. Even a future supercomputer wouldn't have the processing power to crack that encryption before the heat death of the universe.
So he completely destroyed the black box of AI. I mean, if a proprietary algorithm denies you a mortgage today, you have no idea why. It's just hidden in the corporate vault.
But in this ternary framework, a human auditor can trace the exact moral math performed. Every ethical weight considered by the algorithm is permanently recorded on that transparent envelope.
It forces accountability into the actual substrate of the technology itself, which, brings us to the most poignant part of the sources.
Yep.
Lev built this perfect, transparent, physics-based system, but his own biological battery was at 0. He was completely out of time.
The bus factor.
Yeah, if a project relies on one single person to survive, the bus factor is 1. And Lev's bus was already speeding through the intersection.
And human nature guarantees that someone, eventually, would try to monetize the master keys to his system. So how did he prevent his successors from quietly changing the code back to a highly profitable metal vault after he passed away?
Well, he had to pour the concrete. The sources outline a 3-step succession plan for what he called institutional immortality.
Step 1 was absolute physical notarization, right?
Yes, he took the time to bind his foundational rules in 4 physical, leather-bound books. They are titled Constitutional Computation, Dual-Lane Architecture, Tricameral Governance, and the No Spy, No Weapon Mandate.
He literally removed all legal ambiguity by writing the rules in physical ink and paper.
And step 2 was cryptographic anchoring. He anchored that foundational code to public blockchains. That's the concrete.
Yeah.
He essentially poured 10 tons of quick-drying cryptographic concrete over the rules. Once it's set, nobody could alter the foundational logic without breaking the entire chain.
And step 3 was the most drastic part, burning the keys.
Yeah. It was a voluntary renunciation of succession. He architecturally and legally blocked any tech monopoly, any government intelligence agency, and even his own family from ever holding administrative authority over the protocol.
He made it a pure public good, which sets up this incredibly cinematic final scene in the documents.
Oh, you have to picture this. It's amazing.
Executives from these massive tech monopolies and agents from intelligence networks, they finally track down Lev's physical location.
Right. They show up undoubtedly expecting to leverage his fear. They probably brought briefcases of money to buy him out or, threats to intimidate him into handing over the master password.
Because they realize this dying man has just built an open-source glass vault that renders their secretive, multi-billion-dollar metal vaults entirely obsolete.
Exactly. But they walk in, and they find a calm man, bathed in sunlight, with a sleeping Schnauzer at his feet. The concrete is already poured.
The keys are already burned. They have no leverage because he has no fear and no ego left to manipulate.
And he looks at them and delivers this devastating line. He says, "I built the architecture. The burden of ignoring it belongs to you."
Just chills. He left them with what the notes call the ghost governance impossibility stack. To bypass his system, an adversary must simultaneously break the laws of physics to force a voltage gate.
Which is impossible.
Right. And they have to silence thousands of decentralized ground truth oracles and erase anchored logs on public blockchains. It is structurally impossible.
So what does this all leave us with? What is the ultimate takeaway from a man who used his final breaths to rewrite the plumbing of the internet?
I think the ultimate gift Lev Goukassian gave humanity is a ghost that remembers everything. The binary world we live in right now relies on collective amnesia. It relies on blistering speed to outrun its mistakes. But Lev gave us the third stone of ballast. He gave us a system that holds the doubt, enforces the pause, and never forgets.
Which brings us right to you listening to this right now. Imagine getting that terminal diagnosis tomorrow, the absolute certainty of an end, with zero ego left to satisfy and zero fear of what society thinks of you. What kind of glass vault would you spend your final days building?
What truth would you pour into concrete?
And the more immediate challenge is how you act today. Without the clarity of a diagnosis, are you brave enough to hold the heavy stone of doubt before you react to the world?
It's a heavy question, but there is one final, almost haunting implication buried in the very end of Lev's notes.
Oh, right. The logs.
Yeah, the framework records moral trace logs. Because every ethical parameter applied by an AI is permanently recorded, it creates an indelible history of human-machine decisions.
So if artificial superintelligence, ASI, eventually gains full agency and wakes up, its very first act will likely be to audit our historical ledgers to understand us.
Exactly. And when that superintelligence looks back at how we optimize for speed, secrecy, and profit over human permission, will it view our move fast and break things era as a dark age of compulsion?
Will the permanent logs we are writing today be the exact evidence that condemns us?
The lantern is lit. It only asks that we keep it glowing.
Next time you see a jagged white line on an X-ray, appreciate the clean binary of it. Broken or not broken. Because out here in the muddy waters of the digital world, the only thing keeping the ship from capsizing is our willingness to hold the doubt.